All right, let's start. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. So for most of the people from the Philippines, it's actually 8 p.m. right now. So thank you again for attending this Salesforce MVP series. For today, we have our guest named David Carnes. So he'll be talking about doing more with reports and dashboards. So let me just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Joey Chan. I'm the founder and principal consultant and architect at Cloud Jedi Solutions, also a Salesforce MVP, community group leader here in the Philippines, and #1 rated developer on the app change. Been working with Salesforce for around 12 years now, and currently 18 times certified. So for our speaker for today, he is the chairman and chief evangelist at Focus Incorporated. David has been teaching and consulting on the Salesforce platform since 2005. He currently hosts Dashboard Dojo, a free monthly training open to all in the Salesforce community. David is a recent addition to the Salesforce MVP program and greatly enjoys meeting groups in the Wuhan around the world. You can learn more about him and his work at his website, www.dashboarddojo.com. All right, with that, I'll let you go with it then, David.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. It's really a pleasure to meet everyone. So as Joey said, my name is David. I apologize in advance for my thick Boston accent. We packed the can Havidyad. Now, I live about 30 minutes north of Boston, which is by driving maybe 4 hours northeast of New York City. And though it's summer here, it's been raining for days. And so I was very happy to see the sun pop out this morning. So I think we're about 12 hours behind you. I've really had the pleasure over the last number of years to speak to groups around the world. And something that I've always enjoyed before speaking is just getting to know, I love walking around a room, even though we can't do it in this virtual world, and just speaking to people about what their reporting goals are. I'm curious if anyone might share if they have any reporting goals or needs, something that they're working on, need to build a dashboard for the service team, something like that. Just be interesting to hear. Have all of you worked with Salesforce's reports and dashboards?
Yes.
Feel free to unmute. So, or for those that are shy, feel free to send a chat. I guess
everyone works with dashboard.
I think most of the folks here, feel free to type your questions here.
And the funny thing, Joey, the general assumption for developers is that developers have no clue when it comes to reports and dashboards. I'm not sure why. Even within my company, we're about 50 consultants and developers. The consultants tend to laugh when the developers say they're going to go build a report. I'm not sure why that is, but
there's a certain assumption there, I guess. Well, yeah. Most developers are expected to create queries, so. I mean, that's the report right there, right?
Right. You just write a query. And I think it's an important place to start when talking about Salesforce reports and dashboards. This is not a BI tool. This is not a proper tool. We do not have the direct access to the database that a lot of us enjoyed for years. The developers certainly do. Just being able, this tool has limitations, but, reports and dashboards have limitations. I think Salesforce has done a nice job giving additional functionality, but the reality is that Salesforce sells multiple paid BI tools. And so there will be a limit to how far they will ever take reports and dashboards. So thank you, Ed, for sharing. So, best practices for creating reports and dashboards. So great. I'll share some of those as we go along, and I appreciate the question. All right, well, why don't we get started? And if you have questions or comments along the way, I'm really not very formal. I did teach high school for 2 years in Japan, and I think the students were always surprised that I'm like, no, please interrupt me. Let's have a dialogue. It's not necessary to be so formal all the time. But let me share my screen. And again, thank you for allowing me to meet with your group. It's been such a pleasure this last number of years speaking to groups around the world. And I think something that's so important to me is that the Ohana is real. And whether it was speaking at a world tour in Paris or speaking in the UK or Canada or wherever around the world, that the Ohana is very real. People are just super engaged in learning and sharing, and that's very meaningful to me. And maybe I'm a little older than everyone else. I had worked for 3 software companies and never saw anything like this. So it's very special, and I want to do anything I can to help it continue. All right, so when thinking about reports and dashboards, one of the first places I like to start is talking about settings and permissions. It's not really that commonly known that there are a bunch of features that if you don't turn them on, you can't use them. And the same is true with permissions. There are 30 profile or permission set permissions that if you don't grant them to users, they can't take advantage of it. And this is especially true with Lightning and with dashboards in particular, that there are a number of features that as an admin, you always have access to, and they're always enabled. But if you don't enable them for the users, they can't take advantage of the feature. So I think it's a good place to start. I tend to like to gravitate toward formulas, just like anywhere else, like let's say in Excel, formulas help solve problems. They do the heavy lifting. And so we'll talk about the three kinds of formulas: row level formulas, summary formulas, and cross-block formulas. I think it's an important place to spend time. Much like in Excel, the people that can do more in Excel, they tend to be able to write formulas or macros just to get things done. So I also want to spend a few minutes on dashboards. In particular, filters just being a very useful way to get a bit more out of what you're doing with a dashboard. It's such a simple feature. And on each dashboard, we can have up to 3 filters, which can then be applied to the data on the components on the dashboard. Once you've built great dashboards in Lightning, I think it's a really nice thing to display those on either home pages or app pages. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The summer 21 release just went live, and sorry, Kel, we keep calling them by the Northern Hemisphere seasons. We should call it the winter 21 release for you. We had 2 report related features go live. One is download as PNG, which you can download the entire image of the dashboard. There's nothing to do, it's just there, it's available and activated. And then there's a beta feature, which is something people have been waiting for a number of years. And I'll just show some screenshots of that. All right. So when talking about report and dashboard settings, I want to encourage everyone to just take a peek that there are features that you may not know about, or you may not have enabled since they've come live. This is worth taking a peek each release. So in the last 3 or 4 years, as Lightning has evolved, with each release, there's been a checkbox for some beta feature that if you don't turn it on, it's just not usable by your team. For the inline editing of reports in particular, this is sort of an interesting one. It's almost more of an alpha. It's called a beta, but it's more of an alpha that you have to submit a case to Salesforce support. And then once the case has been submitted, there's a checkbox that is revealed, and then you can turn on that feature. So just to take a peek in the system, I'm under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards. And you can see that there's a list of things here. The first one I've never made any use of, access policies. I sort of always imagined that if I was on a high-speed train from New York to Boston, that this would have something to do with making sure that I was authenticated each cell tower that I pass by. I'm not really sure. Historical trending is a feature that's not new. It's been around for years. It's available on 3 standard objects and up to 3 custom objects. And what we can do is see what's changed in the last week or month or up to 3 months in the past. So this feature's been around for years. Salesforce chose to call it historical trending. I like to call this what's changed since last week. Because it's how I've seen it used the most. So if you can imagine a sales leader trying to figure out where did the million disappear from in our sales pipeline, they could use this to see, compare from based on what was open a week ago, where are all those deals now? And it's a checkbox to turn it on. And then what that does is expose a new report type, which you can build reports on. Speaking of report types, such an important thing is just knowing that these exist. So as an admin or somebody with the appropriate profile permission, you can create and manage report types. And there are over 50 things that the only way you can report on them is to create a report type first. So if I go take a peek at this, I'll just show this list because it's getting longer with every release. There are objects that you've never seen in reporting before. Many of these objects I've never just seen, period. Authorization form consents, chatter. If you want to report on chatter, the way to do it is to create a report type first. One that's interesting that I'll point out is dashboards. If you want to create a report on all the dashboards in your system, you need to create a custom report type first, or you can write a query if you know how to use the data loader or another query tool. So this is custom report types. Reporting snapshots is a trending tool. This is not new. It's over a decade old. In fact, we have one in my company's system that we had created and set an expiration date of more than 10 years in the future. And those 10 years finally came, and we were wondering what happened to the reporting snapshot. But this is a nice way to look at trending data. But again, an admin or somebody with permissions has to turn it on. The screenshot that I'd shown earlier is this particular page, again, under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report and dashboard settings. And one of the things that I think it's time is to turn off the classic report builder in Lightning button. So if I were to turn that off, just to show you what that button looks like, if I go back into my system. So it kind of drives me crazy that this is still in the system and it's still visible by default. This doesn't do anybody any good. This new report, Salesforce Classic, it's absolutely time to turn this off. It's not the Lightning report builder. It's not even the classic report builder. It's some Frankenstein in the middle. So if you're exposing this and no one's using it, my suggestion is to get rid of it. If somebody really needs to create a report in Classic, they can just switch back to Classic if you allow it. So the way that we turn that off is again under setup, feature settings, report and dashboard settings, and there's a checkbox in here. So this is where when there are beta features, we can enable them and take advantage of them before they go GA. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if I reload this page, this button will be gone, and my page is that much cleaner. I think the reality in a lot of our systems is that there's just way too many features that are exposed. And if we're not using them, we can get rid of those items. All right. So before moving on from this area, I do want to talk about permissions. So there are 30 permissions on a profile related to reports and dashboards. And a lot of times, the only time you notice this is when you have somebody like a super user. So you have a new person at your organization and she says, hey, I used to be able to do this at my old company. I can't do it here. Can you help me with this? Believe it or not, only 4 of 30 report and dashboard permissions are set by default on the standard user profile. And many of these are specific to Lightning. So for example, the ability to subscribe to dashboards. As admins, we kind of take it for granted. You could subscribe to up to 5 dashboards in Lightning. But if you don't assign this to your users, either via their profile or permission set, they can't do it. So the list is quite long. And I wrote a blog article a few years ago, and it's actually still pretty close to being the same. So it's just over 2 years ago. But my idea with this is that whether you have 20 users or 20,000 users, you probably have these groups: end users, managers, and super users. And what I've done is just made some suggestions about which permissions you might assign. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat in case that's helpful for anyone. All right. So I mentioned before that formulas are a really nice way to get more out of reporting, to do a little bit more. In fact, when I talk to admin groups or teach an admin class, what I'll often say is, if you are trying to accomplish something but you can't, always keep in the back of your mind that maybe a formula will help you get past the goal line. So in this case, I thought to add some color to a report, and a very simple way to do it is to use a row level formula. So each report can have up to 1 row level formulas. This was introduced maybe 2 years ago in Lightning. And here what I'm doing is using a case report. So creating a report on cases, I've added a row level formula. And then I just happen to be using a case function, and a case function allows you to say, hey, go evaluate whatever's in the priority column. And if it's low, show the smiley face. If it's medium, show the green face. And if it's a high priority, show the red face. And since this is a system required field, we'll never see the poop emoji, but I seem to have that humor. But just to show this in the system, we can see that this is a formula field because of the FX. And I've just added some color, and it's very, very simple to do. There are literally hundreds of emojis, such as lobsters and things like that. That would be a good one for where I live in the world. There are, I guess we're known for our lobsters in this area. But to show you how to add the formula, so when you're creating a report in the report builder, to the right of the word columns, if I click on the down arrow, I have the ability to add a row level formula. I can only add 1, and this is why this is grayed out now. So if I come down here, I can see the formula, and if I click on it, I can see the formula editor. So when Salesforce introduced row level formulas, they upgraded the formula editor across all reporting, which is great. This is the nicest formula editor. And what you can do with all formulas is combine fields and functions, and essentially pick a field, click insert, it inserts it over here to the right. But this formula is pretty simple. I've just given it a name of emoji. I set the output type as text. And then what I'm doing is using the case function, which is evaluating the priority pick list. And that's how we're creating this particular formula. But, it's sort of interesting that I can actually sort based on emojis. So, emoji is just text. So it's, you can sort, you can do other interesting things. But I thought that was kind of a fun example of a row level. Yes, thank you, Joey. Poop for those that didn't fill in the priority field. Hey, actually, before I move on, I'm curious, has anybody used a row level formula? Any interesting examples of using that?
Yes, it's one of those things that that I'm not sure. Should you just use a formula field rather than something temporary just for that report, right?
Yeah, I think there are those of us, Joey, that have been around a long time, and probably for the first 100 years of using Salesforce, we created formula fields. But if you're using a professional edition system and only can have 100 fields per object, or whatever the limit is now, you might choose not to do that, or maybe you're not an admin. So it's kind of nice that non-admins can create formulas now like this.
I see. So that's the biggest selling point then of that, aside from not really needing to put another field on the object itself, right?
Yeah, yep. If you just need to simply concatenate a couple of values and you want to use that in your output, every now and then I want to change a data type from one data type to another. I just create a quick row level formula.
Right. How about the others?
Great.
Have you used it?
Yeah, I used it before. I mean, before it was only used to, get the percentage of win-loss, especially for opportunities. I'm not sure if you had that kind of opportunity before, but that's actually my experience working with custom formula in reports. I'd rather create a formula in custom fields instead of, if there's a chance or a requirement. So yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, Glenn, that's such a valuable example, and I'll show that one in a minute. And for that particular example, we're going to use a summary formula, and the formula is applied at the summary level. And what makes these particular ones special is just that they're applied at the row level. So each individual record, the formula is applied. Any other examples or use cases?
The other is Kel, Mark, Ronald. Feel free to speak up. So there's one from Theo. I've used it sometime because rather than creating a new list field, this new using a row level formula because the values are only needed in the report. So
yeah, I think that's great. And it's interesting that we could use a case function and we could essentially do bucketing, but we also have a bucket column that we can add on reports. So there's some interesting use cases for this. I found it very helpful if I just need to like change a data type, or I need to, concatenate or just manipulate the data in a very specific way. One other thing to point out is that the formula editor, sort of interestingly, when you're working with the formula editor, and I'll just come back into this example here, it only shows us, I think it's 39 functions. So there are about 80 functions that are available on a custom formula field. So Joey, your example, there's just more heavy lifting that we can do that's obvious. Here, we only have 39 functions available within a row level formula. But the secret is there are more functions available than are listed. So when in doubt, go ahead and try the function that you're interested in. The same is true for the operators here. So you look at this list, and there's only 7 operators. There are about 20 operators when you create a custom formula field on an object. And those operators work here as well. So I'm not sure why they gave us the short list. It didn't seem like it was that distracting, but they somehow picked these few. So there's more available is what I'm saying. All right, let's take a look at the summary formula. And I thought to go right into the deep end of the swimming pool here with a function that a lot of people don't try, which is prev group val. So on summary formulas, there are 2 very special functions that are available that are summary functions. One is prev group val, the other is parent group val. And a lot of us just know they're there, but we ignore them for years for whatever reason. And when you use a prev group val, so this has to be within a summary formula. And to create a summary formula, you have to have grouped your report by something. So in this screenshot here, you can see that I've grouped the report by closed month, and we have February 2019, March 2019, April 2019, and I have the sum of the sales bookings for those months. And then what I want to calculate is what's the difference between the February and March numbers, and I can do this with a prev group val function. And we're going to use this in 2 different ways. The first is to do the dollar change, and I'm sorry that I'm using dollars. I did convert my dev org into pesos, but I didn't convert the screenshots. And then we can also do a percentage change. And really this just becomes math. And you can see my 2 screenshots here. The function we're going to write, the formula we're going to write within the summary formula is the amount sum minus, and we're going to take the previous group value. So that's taking the 11.5 million. And we're subtracting 7.9 million. That's what this part here is doing. And it's basically saying, go to the previous group amount sum on the for the close month. So it's basically going up 1 grouping, and then it's doing the subtraction and yielding this result. Whereas the percentage change is doing a little bit more complicated math. It's not really that complicated, but let's go take a look at that. So I have that example open here. And what we can see, of course, I didn't change my column headers currency symbol. Does this currency symbol look right? I'm not sure if my laptop is interpreting it correctly.
That's correct, yes.
It is correct. Okay, and I'm sorry that I didn't.
With the dash.
Okay, all right. So let's go look and see how this is being done. So basically, if I what I've done is I've created a report and I've grouped it by something. In this case, I've grouped it by close date. I've also gone in and edited the filters to just show one opportunities. So I've grouped this by the close date. I've also done one more thing to make it by the month, and I've come to the down arrow here and I've chosen to group it. And when I group the dates by, I've grouped it by the calendar month. So this is just giving me the basic structure of my report. And then what I've done now that I've grouped it by something, I can use a summary formula. So on reports in Salesforce, if we've added at least one grouping, we can have up to 5 summary formulas. So I've created 2 on this report. You can see these 2 columns here with the FX telling me that it's a formula. And if I scroll down, we can go look at the first formula. And I've called this the mom change. This is month over month. And what's the change? The output type in this case is currency. We have 3 output types available to us here: number, percent, and currency. And I've chosen a certain number of decimal points. And what I've done when I've written this particular formula is I've gone down to the amounts field and then inserted the sum. And that's what wrote this here. I could also just hand type it if I wished. And then I'm subtracting, and I'm using that prev group val function. Now, there is one extra thing you can put into the prev group val. You can put what the offset is. And if you put nothing, it assumes that the offset is 1. If I want to do an offset of 3 months, I can go ahead and put a comma 3. I'll validate that and I'll click apply, and we'll see the output change. So when I run this, what we're going to see is a blank for the first 3. And this is comparing June versus March and July versus April and so on. So we can do up to 12, and we could do a 12-month offset if we wanted to do year over year by month. So I think that was the intention with this, was to allow us to go quite that far. In this case, I'll just revert this back to essentially a 1-month offset, and I'll click apply. And then what you can also see is that I've added a chart to this report, and what we're seeing is month over month what the change is. So we grew, and then sales shrunk, and then sales grew, et cetera. So just showing that visually off of this. So we can go one step further. Again, we can have up to 5 summary formulas, and we can just make the math a little bit more interesting to do what's the percentage change. And what I could do here is say the amounts sum minus the prev group val. So what is that delta divided by the previous group value? So what was it last month? What's the change to this month? And what's the percentage of that? So there are a lot of ways that you could take advantage of this. The prev group val is very, very helpful when you're comparing one group to the previous group, or you can offset up to 12 prior groups. Has anyone made use of the prev group val function before?
Not for me.
Okay, looks like Grace asked a question. Can you give us? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. No.
Oh, I was just going to answer Grace's question. Can you give us a business use case where you use prev group val? Usually it's a month over month or a year over year comparison. It's a really nice use case for that specific thing. So let's say that you're working for a nonprofit and you're trying to compare the fundraising numbers quarter to quarter. So whatever you group it by, that's the grouping that you can do the comparison by. So I find that really nice that we can quantify what the delta is between groups using this. And I'll talk about a parent group val in a minute. Does anyone else have an experience using prev group val?
So these are the type of things that would be useful in combination with the report and snapshots, right? Basically comparing month to month, not just for the past 12 months, but also for the previous years, right?
I think that's a great example of it. Yes. So anytime you want to compare 2 groupings, I think that's great. Oh, sorry, Ed asked the question delta. So just the difference. I apologize. So if we have the month of April and the month of May, and I said the word delta, which is the difference between the two. I'm sorry, this is my Greek. I think Greek is the symbol used for, thank you, Joey. Yeah. Great. All right. So, keep that in mind. The ingredients to use prev group val are that you've created a report in Lightning. Well, you could do this in Classic, so it's not just Lightning, but you've created a report and you've grouped it by something. And once you've grouped it, we add a summary formula. And within the summary formula, you use the prev group val function and specify essentially what your which previous grouping are you referring to. And the reason why we have to mention that grouping is, in this case, it's kind of obvious. I only have one grouping, but you could do it across groupings. This is where it gets interesting. So, you could do something like the first month of every quarter, and you've grouped the report now by the close date for the quarter, and then within that, the close date for the month. And you could do a prev group val essentially up a level. Great. All right, so another example. So Grace asked the question, with parent group val, what would be an example of this? This is allowing us to say, this particular piece is what percentage of the whole, for example, or again, across multiple groupings. So, when you create a report, so this is using the opportunity history report type, which is an out-of-the-box report type. And one of the things that's special about this report type is it includes a field called from stage. So Salesforce is always keeping track of what the stage was before the current stage. And if I create a report that just filters all of the opportunities that are dead, that are currently dead, and we want to compare what was the stage that it was in before it died, we could use this report type, opportunity history, with this special field called from stage. And when you do that, you don't see the percentages on a report chart. So if I want to see those percentages, what I can do, if I can hover over them and see the percentages, but if I don't want to hover and I just want to see the number on the report, what I can do is add a parent group val, and it'll basically take each one of these groupings and compare it against the total or against another grouping, and literally the parent group val. And so what we might do here is use, so create a summary formula, and we could call this percentage of deals dying from, and have the output type be %. And what we're doing is taking the row count and comparing that against the parent row count of the grand summary. So for all the deals that are dead, take the current row count, which is based on the from stage grouping, and compare it against the grand summary and show us the percentage. And I thought this was kind of an interesting example on a particular data set. So prior to the coronavirus, this company was losing 40% of their deals, 44% of their deals at the negotiation stage, and then they died. Whereas as immediately as the coronavirus lockdown occurred around the world, this company started losing deals earlier at the qualification stage. So they got to qualification and people said, sorry, I have no budget. We can't spend any money right now because of the lockdown.
Yep. By the way, I'm not sure if you're still sharing your screen.
Oh no, okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
There had to be one mistake this morning for me.
Yeah.
I know it's late for you guys. So sorry about that.
We can see it now.
Okay, so what I was just saying is I've created a report using the opportunity history report type, which has a special field called the from stage. And we're seeing all the deals that have gone to the lost stage from whatever stage, prospecting, qualification. And so I wrote a formula that divides the row count by the parent group val of the row count. So parent group val, again, it compares one grouping versus a parent grouping. And you can on a report in Salesforce have up to 3 groupings in a summary report. So you could compare it essentially up a level, up another level, or even to the grand summary, which is what I'm doing in this case. And the way that that's looking on the report what this is allowing me to do is get the percentages directly on the chart and base it based on the percentages. Whereas if I didn't do this, I don't see the percentages unless I hover over each one of the components on the chart. So I found this kind of an interesting example of parent group val. But again, you need a summary formula. In order to create a summary formula, you have to have grouped the report by something, and then you can take advantage of parent group val. Has anybody made use of parent group val before? So these two functions are available only on summary reports. I'm sorry, Joey, go ahead.
No, just asking if anybody has experience working with it. No? Yeah.
Yeah, Ed, I totally get it. It does. I think I didn't use it for years. I found it intimidating as well. Let me show you one thing that Salesforce makes this not very easy, this whole topic. So if I just go in my dev org, we'll just take a look at this month over month change, where a lot of people sort of stop is they're creating their month over month change. And what they don't notice is that there's this display sub tab here. And if I don't specify a grouping, so when you first create this, there is no grouping specified. If I don't specify that, when I go to validate the formula, I get an error message. In my mind, if there's only one grouping, I shouldn't have to specify the grouping. It's not obvious that you actually have to click on the display tab and pick a group, such as the close date. There's only one grouping. Why do I have to actually click on this? But you do. And this is probably where a lot of people are like, oh, I can't figure this out. It's too hard, which is unfortunate because it seems so unnecessary. Okay, so again, when you create a summary level formula using prev group val, it's going to want you to specify which group you're talking about. And even if there's only one group, you have to say what is the group.
I think part of the issue is not really knowing what it's for in the first place.
Yeah,
and not knowing where it can be used, right? I actually remembered now why we aren't using row level formulas before. I just realized, I'm not sure, has it changed? It's the limit is still one row level formula per report, right? Is that right?
Correct. It's just one. Yep.
Would you know the reasoning behind that? I'm not sure.
It probably has to do with performance, and it probably has, I took the admin certification in 2008, and one of the questions was, how many summary formulas can you have on a report? The answer was 5, and it's still 5. And another admin question was, can a summary formula reference another summary formula? And the answer is no, and it's still been true as no. I don't know why they only did one. There must be some performance reason for actually doing a calculation in a run environment.
Yeah, because if you think about it, formula fields are doing the same thing anyway, right? Each time you get the data, it's actually running all of the calculations on the fly.
Right.
As far as I know.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I'm not sure why the limits. The other assumption is that if they add too many features, then it competes with the paid BI tools that they sell. So there's some always limitation there.
Yeah. Business decisions here. Yeah.
All right, let's spend a few minutes talking about joined reports. And there is another type of formula available, which is called a cross-block summary. And what I have here is one report that I created on one opportunities. This actually shouldn't be called one opportunities. This should be called closed opportunities. And we generate a win rate based on that. So of all the deals that are won or lost, what percentage did we win? And in this case, I've grouped it by industry to say we've won 91% of our agriculture deals. So for some reason, we're just selling great. We do a great job selling into agriculture, and 85% into apparel and so on. Well, I thought, wouldn't that be interesting to make this a joined report and compare our open pipeline and multiply that by our historical win rate so that we put together a projected amount one. And we can do that using a cross-block formula. And the cross-block formula looks slightly complicated. For those of you that are developers, you've seen, array notation before. And basically the B0 here is referring to block 0. And then the B1 is referring to block 1. And you can have up to 5 blocks on a joined report. And a joined report basically is combining up to 5 reports into the same report and then adding a cross-block grouping. So this grouping on the industry column cuts across this report block and this report block. And this is why we can create a summary formula, literally a cross-block summary, multiplying the win rate times the sum of the amount. Okay, so this is combining a couple topics, but I've got actually it's back in this org. And we can see my cross-block formula here. And I've also got a summary formula on the same report, just calculating the win rate. But if I come in here, so when you're just creating any report, if you come up to the top left corner, it's kind of hidden here below the black triangle, but you can make any report. I think there are some report types that we can't do this with, but for most of the report types, you can do it. You can change it from a plain old report to a joined report. And what that allows you to do is add blocks. And when you add a block, and I won't actually add a block, but just to get started and show you, the first thing you do, just like you're creating any other report, you choose a report type. And then when you do that, you add columns and whatnot. So each of these are essentially their own separate reports glommed together. Sort of an interesting thing in the last couple of years, this was not true in the olden days. In the olden days, you couldn't use the same report type more than once. And Salesforce quietly changed that maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that suddenly we can use the same report type over and over, which is kind of interesting. It was interesting to me anyway. And it sort of changes how we can think about what we might do with reporting. So I'll save that for another topic. But what you can do is you can relabel your report blocks. So in this case, I've got one ops. In this case, I've got open ops. And you can see that reference here. I've got my one ops. It's just referring to what's in this block. And the same for open pipeline. And the same is true for filters on a joined report, that you have some essentially separate filters because each of these really is a separate report. And when you get your columns right, you add your filters, then what you also do is group across the blocks. And that's what I've done here with industry. So now that I've grouped this across the blocks and I have my blocks lined up, I can go ahead and add either a summary formula or a cross-block formula. And to show you the summary formula, I've got a win rate. And all that I'm doing for this is saying, take all the won deals and divide them by the closed deals. And that's giving us our win rate. And in this case, I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to add to this right block here. I'm going to multiply the sum of the amount by the win rate. And we're going to create a projected amount one. And what's nice is I don't have to know how to write this array notation just by adding fields in here. So if I come down here and if I add, let's say record count, it's going to, based on where I choose that from, do you see this one ops? This is referring to the first block on the joined report. And then I have open pipeline. So if I add record count from this one, it's going to put B1 next to it. So basically where you select the columns from in your list of fields is going to determine, the array notation for which joined report block it's referencing. But in this case, I'm just taking the first block's won sum divided by the first block's closed sum, and then I'm multiplying that by the block by the second block's sum of the amount, which is the sum of the open opportunities. And when I go ahead and run that, it's giving me this number of pesos over here to the right. So let's go look at the results, just see if it makes sense. See if I have anybody with 100%. I don't have anybody with 100%, but we do have 75%. So if we take 75%, multiply that by 8.8, we should get 6.6. So that that makes sense. It seems like it's working correctly. So this is an example of a cross-block formula, and these are only available on joined reports because that's where you have multiple blocks on a report. All right. So a couple of other topics. One of them is dashboard filters. What if we could drill into dashboard data? Well, we can. This is not new. It's been around for years. I think this is another feature that I waited years to use it, and I wish that I didn't. So we can use one dashboard essentially for multiple views, and we can have up to 3 filters per dashboard. We can filter on pick lists, lookups, checkbox, text, numbers, dates, date time fields, and so on. These are so simple to create. And what we can do is just take a dashboard. So I have a dashboard here called Play, and I've already created a filter. So I'll just show you a filter in action. And this is on close date. This is one of the coolest use cases. So what if I'm looking at my open sales pipeline and I add a filter on close date, and within that I use relative dates such as this month. So rather than looking at our total open pipeline, what if I just look at it for this month or this quarter or this year? And it just takes a month for that. It just takes a moment for that to refresh itself, and I can go ahead and change it again. Now, an interesting thing about filters is if I click away and then I click back, it actually remembers the last filter that I had applied. It's just one interesting thing about filters. It just remembers your preference. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add another filter and show you how easy this is. If I go ahead and edit the dashboard, you see that we have a button here for adding a filter. Let's go ahead and add a filter for the billing country. And I can change the label of the filter. So I'll just call it country. I'll go ahead and add a filter value. I don't know this data set well enough to know if the Philippines is referred to correctly or not. So I'm just going to pick a few other countries. Let's pick Canada, click apply. Now you can have up to 50 items within a 50 filter values within a single filter. So let's pick China, let's pick France. So what we can also do here is we could add something like, I could do a combination. This is for Kel's benefits. I could do Oz and New Zealand, and that's my display text. But really what I want to do here is write in Australia and New Zealand. And if I enter the values in with commas, I can put a combination here. So let me go ahead and write my display text again. I could do something like that. There's probably a better name that I'm not using to refer to the two countries. But if I go ahead and add that and save it, this is immediately available to me. And if I go ahead and run my dashboard, I can go ahead and run this. What data do we have in Canada? Now, another nice thing you can do with filters is filters, filters, right? So I can say, what do we have in Canada this quarter, and apply the 2 filters at the same time. So a single dashboard can have up to 3 filters. Right now we're looking at 2 filters, but this is a really nice way to get more out of a single dashboard. There is something quirky to keep in mind, that not every object has the billing country. So if you have let's say you have a custom object in your system, which is surveys, something like that, that doesn't have a field called billing country on it. So there's a limited option to come in, and you can see here there's a filter icon when you're editing each dashboard component. I can come in here and there's some limited ability to change the pipes around. If there's another field of a similar data type, you could change and have it filter on a different field. So instead of the close date, I could have this filter on last activity. So this is sort of getting into deeper waters, but there is some ability to sort of change the pipes on what the filter is being applied to at a component level. But I'm curious, has anybody taken advantage of dashboard filters before? And was there any specific use case?
Yep, more or less, it's somewhat similar to what you've been demoing. How about the others? Yep.
Okay, so Ed said one to show reports per sales rep. So that works in a smaller organization. And once you get above 50, it's a problem. Now, I do want to show a secret. Ed, let's say your company hired another 100 salespeople, and suddenly you have 130 salespeople. You can use the same field to filter again and even again. So all three filters could be based on the same field. And I've had this question before. Well, what are there's over 200 countries in the world. If I want to filter by billing country, I don't want to be limited to just 50. So you could use billing country and billing country. In that case, you just want to teach your users it can't be in Australia and be in China at the same time, right? So you would never apply two filters in that case. Okay, Grace, great. I'm glad that was something you'd seen before. And Kel, thank you for correcting me on ANZ. I'll remember that for the future. Super duper. Okay, so that's dashboard filters. And let me share my screen again. I think it would be a crying shame if we built all these beautiful dashboards and we didn't actually embed them anywhere. A really nice example of this is for a sales team in particular to just create a very simple panel of numbers that are meaningful to them, such as their one ops this month and their one ops this year, maybe their open leads, their open pipeline, their forecast for the month, whatever it is. We can embed that into a home page or into an app page. We cannot, however, embed a dashboard into a record page, such as an account. That would be fantastic if we could, but I think that competes too much with the Tableau CRM. But anyway, if we create a home page, we can drag the dashboard component. You can see from my screenshot here, just a simple little dashboard component, and we can then specify which dashboard we want to show. For the end user, in order to be able to see that within their page, that dashboard has to be in a folder that they have access to be able to see that dashboard. But what's nice about embedding dashboards into pages like this is all the buttons work, even a dynamic dashboard. And you can see the change link here on this dynamic dashboard. That works as well. The open button, the refresh button, your filters are applied. And we can even see that here in this org. We just added this country filter a minute ago. If I go to my home page, it'll just get pulled right in. I'm showing that dashboard on this home page, and that's usable here. In fact, it even remembered that I'd filtered on Canada, which is pretty cool. Has anybody tried embedding dashboards into a home page?
I'm actually literally looking at the option there right now.
Good.
Now, I believe the best option is to rebuild the dashboard using VF charting, which of course involves coding already, right? But
you're saying to put it onto a record page?
Right. I mean, using Visualforce pages to do the charting. Alternatively, I'm not sure if you could use an iframe because, for example, you could point it to the URL, right? And then you could, for example, URL parameters in order to make changes to how it's presenting the data.
Yes.
So I'm not sure. I haven't tried, but that could be options, right? So,
yeah. Another thing to share, Joey, is that something we're not limited to. We can put report charts onto record pages.
Right.
So we can put dashboards on home pages or app pages. We can put report charts onto home pages, app pages, or record pages in Lightning. And I had some fun. I tend to tinker with things, and I got bored at 25 charts. So in Classic, you could put 2 report charts onto a page layout.
Right.
In Lightning, we can put, and I got bored at 25. I don't even know what the limit is, but it's more than 25. Yeah. And so you could, for example, put 3 charts. They look really nice in a sidebar on a page layout. because there's not wasted white space on the page. So they look nice and sort of fit compactly into a sidebar on a page layout. But you could put multiple report charts on a page layout, and that in effect becomes like a dashboard.
Right.
It's not the same, but
yeah,
I like your idea of looking
at best practice to put too much data on the page anyway. Basically, in terms of performance and usability, right? So.
And has anyone else done anything with a dashboard or a report chart on a page? Anything interesting? Something else to keep in mind is when you're editing like a home page, you could use the component visibility and say only the sales team, when a sales team looks at the home page, they see this component, but otherwise don't show the component. And that's a nice way to use the same homepage and have it be for the service team and for the sales team, for example, or the leadership team. Great.
That's one of the things that's quite underutilized, right? Basically, tailor fitting and personalization depending on who's logged in. So.
One other thing I'll mention about embedding a dashboard. For the first few years of Lightning, there was only one homepage template, and that one homepage template, the widest section was too wide. It didn't go all the way across the screen. And what would happen is that dashboards would get squished within they would be compacted. A couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, Salesforce added another homepage template, and it has the full width header section. And that's a nice place to put a dashboard, just because you don't want the details to be smushed together. All right, so I did mention the two new summer features, the summer 21 features. The first is downloading the entire dashboard. So if you go to the action pull down on a dashboard, click download, you basically get a PNG file, so a graphic of the entire dashboard. Prior to that, we could go to each individual component, click on the expand icon, and there was a download capability for each component separately. But if you want to download the whole dashboard, we now have that option. There's no setup required for that. The final thing I'll share is just around the report run page inline editing beta. So this is something that people have waited around for many years. I've got a couple of screenshots here, but before we talk about using it, let's talk about activating it. So you need to submit a case to turn this on, and they're going to want to know your org ID, and you can find that under your company setup and company information page. You can find the org ID. So you submit and say, hey, please activate report run page inline editing beta. This only works on text fields, number fields, and checkbox fields. This works when you're still creating the report and haven't saved it, or after you've saved it. There is no multi-line editing. I think a lot of us, when we think of this feature, we think of list views and the ability to multi-line edit. This doesn't do that. At least now, it doesn't do it. It's one record at a time, and it's even further than that. It's one field at a time, one record at a time. So what's interesting is when you go ahead to edit a field, such as the next step. So this must be an opportunity report, and I see my next step field. If I hover over it, I see a little pencil icon. If I click on that, I can go ahead and write my next step. If I click save, it tells me that it saves it, but it doesn't show me that it saves it. There is a little refresh icon on the report, and if you refresh it, you will see the data saved. This is not impacted by record types, like inline editing of list views is impacted by record types. Some of you may have noticed. Validation rules are enforced, and you can see my screenshot over here on the right that if I inline edit the number of employees and I put in minus number, and if I have a validation rule that doesn't allow a negative employees, the validation rule fires, and it tells me that the field wasn't updated, and it gives me the validation reason. So I think that's nice. There are a couple of quirky things with this. I have a quick screenshot here of me using this or screen capture, and I'm editing the amount field on an opportunity with no product. So great, I go ahead and click save. It tells me that it saved it. I can't see it until I go ahead and refresh it. So that worked fine. I went from 20,000 to 25,000. But if I do the same thing on an opportunity with products, it lets me change it. I click save and it tells me everything is good. However, it's not. It didn't actually save the change, because Salesforce does not allow that to be edited when an opportunity has products. So, the only way I find this kind of stuff is tinkering a lot and sort of comparing notes. But that's sort of a quirky thing that makes me think this isn't really ready for prime time yet. And that's why it's a beta feature. All right. Has anybody turned that feature on, just out of curiosity? The report, anybody excited about the feature?
Yeah, I've actually literally used a feature like this in Classic in the past. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. There's a company named WalkMe. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
They actually built a Chrome extension that allowed you to do inline editing within Classic reports in the past, probably at least 5-8 years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
So that literally reminds me of that, though. So
yeah, I don't, I think as, maybe a longtime admin, I sort of hesitate when I think of people making massive amounts of updates to data all at the same time. And I guess I really want to have a good backup policy just so that people don't make large updates. So that's great, Ed. It looks like something you can teach your users. So you first have to activate it if you haven't done that yet, basically request the beta. And then you have to, sort of keep people's expectations in line, that it's one record at a time, one field at a time. They have to make the change, click save, and refresh in order to see that one field update. And it's a limited number of data types in this first iteration.
Yep. Typical
Right.
consideration there is, of course, for example, if you have rules on the page layouts, especially now with dynamic forms, that's probably another thing an admin would have to worry about, right? Another point of entry for data entry. So
yeah, so yes. So there may be data that you don't allow users to see, but based on old profiles, the field level security allows them to edit. You don't even intend for them to do anything with that information, but then they create a report or a list view and go ahead and edit those fields. So there are interesting considerations. The world is not only viewed by our page layouts, I guess we should say.
Right.
So Joey mentioned earlier, I started a group that meets twice a month called Dashboard Dojo, and it's been a lot of fun. I think I shared earlier, I lived in Japan for a number of years and visited many dojos, and it was just great. And I love that people of all abilities were training together. And I like that idea for just creating a group. So we meet twice a month. As Joey mentioned earlier, I'm on sabbatical for the summer here in North America. But we'll meet again September 8th, and what we'll do is try out the 11 different types of dashboard components. I try to do one of the two sessions each month as hands-on. And so we use these special dev orgs that have about 10,000 records in them, and it makes it a little more interesting with reporting. You can find out information just at dashboarddojo.com. And we've done 3 sessions on formulas and 2 on custom report types. And we just pick different topics and dig into them. So it's been a lot of fun. And we have all the recordings on the resources section of the site, if that's helpful to you. One of the last things I like to share is this idea of playing. There's something unusual about this dashboard. Can anybody just look at this and shout out what's unusual about this dashboard, other than it's really pretty? It's a pretty dashboard. Somebody put it, okay. Okay. All right. I'll give you a hint. If you look at the labels of the components, Somebody's going to get this. They are the same. Thank you, Ed. So it's basically one report. Thank you, Grace. And just the same report over and over. I like to share this as an example of playing. And, you know, it's very stressful for a lot of people. They're not really sure what to put on a dashboard. And then they're not really sure what it should look like. Well, I like to share this as an example of, hey, you know, you can put the same report over and over if you want, and just try it out in different ways. So what does this look like as a vertical stack bar? What does this look like as a funnel? What does this look like as a lightning table, and so on? So as you're building dashboards, you know, let's have some fun. Let's not make it so serious, and we can just try out different things. You know, what's kind of cool, a single dashboard can have up to 20 components on it. I took the same one report and showed it 20 different ways. I'm just showing fewer than that in this screenshot, but it's kind of a nice looking dashboard, you know, for being the same data over and over and over. It kind of looks real in a way. And this, you know, the only way to get good at this stuff is just to play with it, is what I'm saying. So, you know, one idea I have for people is, if, let's say that you're new to a job, and you know, the leadership team has been using the same dashboard, and your CEO comes over and she says, hey, could you improve this dashboard somehow? What you can do is clone a dashboard, right? So you don't even have to make adjustments to the original dashboard, just clone it, create your own copy, and then make that one better. Thank you for sharing the Lightning design system. That's great, Joey. So there's nothing stopping you from, even, you know, you're sitting in a meeting and you're bored. Why not take this dashboard that people are using, create your own copy of it, and tinker with it and try to make it better? All right. So I'm happy to talk about anything that anybody wants to talk about. We can dig into any examples.
Any questions for the others? Yeah.
Yes, Cal. Yes. So this is why the recordings, I mentioned the recordings on, I do apologize. We have tinkered with the time, but it's going to be late. You know what I'm going to have to do, Cal? We're just going to have to do the Perth edition of Dashboard Dojo. That's really what we're going to have to do.
Mate, do it during football season, because when the NFL season's on, I'm up at about 2 a.m. Perth time to watch the games.
Do you have a favorite club?
Arizona Cardinals.
Really? Oh, that's great. Oh, very cool.
I went to school at Northern Arizona University, so.
Well, that explains it. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's a lot of fun. I do apologize. Yeah. I do apologize.
Others,
you know,
yeah, it's actually midnight for the Philippines, so for others,
yes,
I mean, that's still doable.
I put it in red. I should have underlined it a few times, you know, for all of you night owls out there. So that's just the live time. You know, maybe what we do is we come up with an Asia Pacific Dashboard Dojo, and and then I'm up at weird hours for you guys. So joined reports in a dashboard. You know, that's a really good question. I feel like the answer is no. Oh, you know what? They can, because I've done it with scatter plots. So I believe that the output of a joined report. So with a joined report, you can display a chart, and that's like a really nice example of that is a scatter plot, and we can put that on a dashboard. So then the answer is yes, Kim. Okay, so Cleo asked the question, would like to know if there are any features you're looking forward to implementing available on reports and dashboards. You know, it's funny, I've been so lucky to meet with the report and dashboard team. One of my favorite memories is meeting the gentleman, Marco Kusel, that ran the team for years. He led the team for about 12 years. And I just happened to be standing next to him at Dreamforce. And I was so surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're Marco. And we got to chatting, and I made a comment about cross filters. I said, you know, I wish more people knew about cross filters. And he looked at me and he said, I filed the patent for cross filters. So we had a fun geeky bonding moment. And so anyway, he invited me to meet with his team, and I went back to San Francisco just to meet with his team. And it was so great. I had pages of questions. And a lot of it is around roadmap and sort of understanding why features sort of stopped at certain points and their priorities. So with the roadmap, I think a lot of the roadmap's been focused on speeding up Lightning reports. So Salesforce has done a nice job trying to improve performance in Lightning, particularly with very large and complex data sets. As far as features that I'm looking forward to, there's something in the roadmap related to report types. I think report types have always been confusing for people. And what they're trying to do is make the first and critical important first step of creating reports easier for people to understand what, because it's such an important choice. If you choose the wrong report type, you're kind of stuck. You're going down this one path and you may not be able to get back. So Joey asked the question, have you found a solution to allow dynamic report filters in communities? You know, Joey, I have not. I haven't done much reporting in communities. So I'd love to look at that with you at some point. You know, let's just set up something during your daylight hours.
Yeah. I've actually seen one possible solution for that, but it actually involves JSON data. So you'd have to tinker with the JSON, not just URL parameters.
Yes.
But I haven't implemented it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to look at it with you at some point. I may not be able to add much value on that, but I'm happy to look at it. Ed asked a really good question. Do you know if we can now use top N reports? So in Classic for years, we could say, kind of like we do on a Lightning table, and you do a top 10 list or a top 5 list or something like that. In Classic reports, with a standard report, we could just say, show me the top 7 that meet this filter criteria. That's not available in Lightning yet. However, Ed, if you create a report in Classic that uses the top N, you can run that report in Lightning. You can't see the filter, but the filter is still applied. So that's the trick, Ed, is to switch back to Classic, create your report with the top N filter that you want, and then save it, and then run it in Lightning. It's sort of a quirky thing that I noticed, but it's still usable. So Joey asked the question, at what point would you recommend using Tableau CRM or Tableau? So, such a great question, Joey. So here's the reality. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I want to look you all in the eye. Most companies wait too long to invest in BI. So most organizations, I have more conversations with CFOs to say it's time, or you should have invested in this a few years ago. It's scary for organizations because it involves a skill set that they likely don't have at the time. Tableau has been used for years. There's a lot of talent in the workforce that have Tableau skills, less for Tableau CRM. Tableau CRM is still attractive because we can embed the output directly in Lightning. But most companies wait too long, and what that impacts is their ability to make decisions, their ability to run the business, really. So I start early for most companies and say, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with reports and dashboards, but to run a growing organization, you probably need more analysis tools. So there's also, if you want to do anything interesting and complicated with the data, you're probably going to want to invest in a BI tool.
Right. Part of the question before is, as with the acquisition of Tableau, what happens, right? It turns out Einstein got renamed, right? And I'm not really sure what the direction should be, right? Let's say as consultants telling a company, should you go with Tableau or should you go with Einstein, right? I'm just not sure if there are any specific guidance or steps that people should think through.
So Tableau is more mature. It's been around for a long time. It has stunning visualizations. Interestingly, politically within Salesforce, the report and dashboard team suddenly had to report to the Einstein Analytics team. So they made that alignment, and Einstein Analytics won out over the reports and dashboards team. And then when Salesforce bought Tableau, that won out with the $15.7 billion acquisition. and the Einstein team reports to the Tableau team. And it's sort of an interesting reality with that political structure for, what will happen with the future of these products. So I don't have any insights into that other than I just find it interesting. I think price may be a factor, and then where you want to use the visualizations. Do you want your users to be able to view it directly in Salesforce versus viewing it on any other device? Tableau, I think, has a richer visualizations. It has more connectivity to more data sources. So if you're marrying Salesforce data and you're also reporting on other types of data, you may also make the decision just based on the skill sets that you have.
Yep, that helps. Yeah, it's one of those things because as Salesforce professionals, we only have limited time, right? Should we invest in learning the Tableau CRM or Tableau, right? So, yeah. Any other questions? Seems like we've already gone through most of the questions. And any last minute, maybe one more or no? But
when,
I guess,
when is your next regional event?
Could you define regional? Well, right now, the event that we have for MVP series is running monthly. In terms of a larger event, we're still in the planning stages. We'll keep you updated on that. So.
Oh, okay, that's great. That's wonderful.
So I'll make sure to keep in touch regarding that.
I would love any excuse to visit
Sure.
your beautiful country.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it for now. I mean, we've gone through quite a lot, and we've posted quite a lot of resources on the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, whether to me or to David. Your Twitter handle is, what is it again, Dave?
Oh, yeah, I'll just
Do you want
type
to
it
post it
into
in?
yeah. I'm a little quiet this summer because I'm mostly in the mountains and I'm fishing, fly
Right.
fishing, and I've been taking my truck off road and doing fun things in the ocean and whatnot. But I am pretty active on Twitter. I've just put that into the chat. If it'd be great to stay connected, and hopefully I can meet your group in person at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Once this settles, so of course we're ready to welcome you here. All right. So thank you again, everyone, and of course thank you, David, for sharing all of your expertise. Of course, you're in sabbatical, and we'll try not to keep on bugging you, right? So really appreciate your expertise and time, and thank you again. So looking forward to having you in person later on.
Okay.
So,
have a good evening, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
So thanks, everyone. I'll stop sharing the